All right, that looks like it's showing. All right, in my phone, the text is all backwards, so I hope that's not how it's being recorded. Any Facebook Live experts in the room?
We need a teenager.
All right, I just hope it won't record that way. Thank you folks very much for coming out today. We are starting more or less on time. Thank you for braving the monsoon to get here. Let me get this. My name is Shelby Williams. This is my friend Scott Grigg. We are here to discuss understanding the Texas property tax system and also how to protest your appraisal valuation, which just came out last week. Now, to set some expectations, right up front, I want to address this and clear the air because there's been some discussion on the interwebs about this. We are both candidates for public office. I am a candidate for Plano City Council, and Scott is a candidate for Collin County Tax Assessor Collector for next year. And there was some debate about the timing of this because early voting in Plano is going on right now. So this seminar is timed for right now for three reasons. Number one, our appraisals just came out. So that's when they're scheduled. Number two, the deadline to protest your valuation is in 3 more weeks on May 15th. So the clock is ticking. And third, as we'll cover toward the end of this presentation, there are a few property tax reform measures currently being debated in the Texas legislature. In fact, they're going to go up on the floor of the House tomorrow that will impact us in the next year and in the coming years. The Texas legislative session ends next month on the 27th. So if any of us want to make our voice heard with our legislators, the time to act is right now. So for these 3 reasons, this is when this has to happen. If anybody would like to reschedule the Texas legislature and the county appraisal process until after the election on May 4th, I'm all for it. So another thing I want to clear up, there is no commercial interest in this. We are not selling anything, and we will not invite you to tour a timeshare. This is strictly a public service wrought because I've been heavily involved in the property tax reform efforts, especially this legislative session, and it really amazes me how misunderstood our property tax system is and how much misinformation is out there. So right now, when you can use it the most, I want to disseminate this information. And lastly, I want to make sure you understand that this is a 101 level course. We're going to spend about an hour and a half together, including Q&A, and we're just going to cover the basics about understanding the property tax system, how to protest your appraisal, what you'll need to do, and what's going on in the Texas legislature right now when it comes to property taxes. This will not make anybody an appraisal expert. We will turn you on to resources that you can follow to learn more, but this is meant to give you an entry-level understanding and arm you to follow on with the next steps. All right, so quick introductions. I am Shelby Williams. This is my friend Scott Grigg. Our email addresses are up here, so please take those down. You're free to contact us later with any questions you have about any of this content. As I noted, I've been heavily involved with the property tax reform efforts in both, I'm sorry. Need a quick adjustment for our video feed.
It's coming as mirror image.
Mirror image. Do you know how to fix that?
Yeah.
Okay, have at it. Thank you. So as I noted, I've been heavily involved with the property tax reform efforts both in Plano and in the Texas legislature in Austin this session. I also have an MBA from the University of Texas at Austin. Scott is an internal auditor at the Collin County Tax Office and is a certified fraud examiner. So no funny business from anybody, he'll get you. So here's what we're going to go through. We'll cover the Texas property tax system first. This will be a primer to help you understand how the process works in determining your property taxes. Then Scott is going to take you through understanding the actual appraisal process, how you get that appraisal last week, and how to go through protesting your appraisal value with the county. And then I'll wrap it up with a note about what's going on in the Texas legislature. It won't take too long, but there are some things you need to bear in mind. And then we'll have some Q&A, so save up your questions for the end, and we'll get them all answered. And if we run out of time, of course, our email addresses are readily available for you, and you're free to contact us at any time. So first, to cover understanding the property tax system in Texas. As I noted, there's been a lot of confusion and misinformation about this. I've been to the Capitol 3 times this legislative session to testify and champion property tax reform, and I've heard everything. I've received hundreds of emails from people across Texas who are either confused or they're being taxed out of their homes. Many people have written me saying they've been taxed out of their homes or soon will be because of escalating property taxes. So there are several things to cover and several things to feed into the misinformation. The word tax rate, or words tax rate, is thrown about an awful lot, but we're going to cover what is the tax rate versus the tax burden. The burden is the actual amount of cold hard cash you shell out to pay the tax man. Where do all your taxes go? Who do they get paid to? You've heard we don't set your property value from the cities, the school boards, the counties. Conversely, from the school boards, or from them, you hear that the school board takes the most. They point their finger over there. The school board says that Robin Hood takes a third of your school taxes. And everybody points the finger at the county appraiser's office, who sets your value. And lastly, you've probably heard about the terms rollback rate and effective tax rate. We're going to demystify those and tell you exactly what those mean. So here are the basics. As you know, and as you are all grateful for, we do not have income tax in the state of Texas. What we do have is property tax. This was set into the Texas Constitution when it was ratified in 1876, when the Constitution was ratified. Now, Collin County residents, and I'm most familiar with Collin County, of course, as is Scott, and I'm more intimately familiar with the city of Plano, but the principles apply to all the cities in the area. Collin County residents pay a little more than 2% of their property value, their taxable property value, in property taxes every single year. Now, services such as police and fire are driven by population. The more people you have in a city, the more police and fire you need. Your ability to pay your taxes is based on your income. So the actual value of your property, unless you're looking to sell, is absolutely meaningless, except to the people who are taxing you based on that value. So we're going to look at what this means. Now, 150 some odd years ago, when the Texas Constitution was ratified, and we had an agrarian economy, and land was the primary means of producing wealth, a property tax system probably made a lot of sense. Now we live in a radically different economy, a radically different technological age, and there are efforts underway in the Texas legislature to gradually replace the property tax with a consumption tax, a sales tax, which many feel is much more transparent and equitable. Because the fact of the matter is, if you go to the store and you buy something for $10, and at the cash register they charge you $15, you know the government just took 50% out of your pocket. So the county appraisal district determines your property valuation, which you all got last week. So they say how much your home is worth. Then later, the ISD, the city, the county, and the Collin College Board, they set the tax rate based on that valuation, and we'll go through that process as well. So just remember that unless you're looking to sell, the value of your property is irrelevant other than for tax purposes. So here's the actual process. It starts on January 1st when appraisals begin. This is also when you have to pay the last year's taxes. So they go through a months-long process of appraising the properties across the county every year. This does not mean that they send an appraiser, and Scott will go over this a little more as well. This doesn't mean that they send an appraiser out to each property to look it up and down each year. They estimate based on property values in the area year over year, which is why the protest process is so important. Then the valuations are mailed on April 15th. Y'all got those last week. We all did. Then May 15th is the protest deadline. Everybody floods the county appraiser's office County Appraisal District office every spring to protest their valuations. But then those valuations go to the school board in the ISD in June. And they set a preliminary rate based on the preliminary valuations. And then in September, after all the protests are done and all the valuations are set, and the city and the county know exactly how much your home is worth, then they set the tax rate accordingly based on those property valuations to get the exact tax revenue that they want. And then next you pay your taxes, and we start the cycle all over again. So here is what comprises your property taxes in the city of Plano. This is similar for all the cities in Collin County. As you can see up at the top, the greatest share is by PISD, the school board. Now the PISD share is broken down into the 3 sections below it. They all roll up into the 1.439 figure at the top. You've got the PISD M&O. M&O stands for maintenance and operations. That's just running your operations and keeping things going, paying staff, everything that you need to maintain a school district. Recapture, we'll get into this a little more, is what is commonly referred to as Robin Hood. You've all heard of Robin Hood, and that's where the state, by law, takes money from property-rich districts and gives it to property-poor districts. So about a third of the school district share of property taxes is taken in recapture. And then finally, you have the PISD INS. INS stands for interest and sinking. In layman's terms, this just means the debt. All those school bonds you pass, election after election, those go toward the debt of the school board. Likewise, when cities and counties issue bond referendums, we had a bond referendum last year for the county, and we have a bond referendum for the city of Plano in the current election, for which early voting started yesterday, and the election day itself is May 4th. There's a $45 million bond referendum on the city of Plano ballot. That goes likewise toward the interest and sinking rate, which is just the debt. So we got to pay off the debt, and we got to pay the interest on the debt. So the city of Plano tax, that includes both the city of Plano maintenance and operations and interest and sinking rates, combined makes up a little more than 18% of your total property tax bill. And then Collin County at 0.192 makes up less, and then finally with a little way in is the Collin College District. Now, each of these entities, PISD, city, county, and Collin College, set their own tax rates. They have their own elected representatives that convene at tax time every year to set the budget for their district, for their local taxing authority district, and to set the rate accordingly to raise tax revenue. Now, 2.17% of the property value, or for the average Plano home, that's $7,800 a year in total property taxes going to all these sources. Now, as everybody in here knows, tax rates in the city of Plano, not just tax rates, property values in the city of Plano and in all of North Texas have been skyrocketing in recent years. So let's look at the rollback rate and the effective tax rate real quick. This is an important understanding which will help understand later what's coming and what we've been doing the past few years. So the rollback rate, this is completely unintuitively named. Yet you hear the word, who can understand what it's supposed to mean? Simply put, this is the rate, this is the level, the extent set by state law in 1981 at 8%, when inflation was about 8%, that any local taxing authority in Texas cannot raise your taxes above that level in any given year without allowing that tax increase to be put to a vote. So in other words, and the way the process works now under current state law, and this is what's going up for debate tomorrow on the floor of the Texas House, any local taxing authority, city, county, school board, hospital district, college board, they can increase your taxes up to 8% in any given year without allowing it to be put to a vote by you. So we have seen cities across Texas, including North Texas, ride that 8% line year after year as property values have skyrocketed the last few years. Now, that's the calculation there for anybody who's interested. The effective tax rate, which you may have heard about, that is simply the rate that they set against the finalized property valuations to determine how much tax revenue they're going to get that year. And if they adopt the effective tax rate, that simply means they set the rate to keep your actual tax burden level. Collin County, the Collin County Commissioner's Court, has done this for the past 3 years. As property values in Collin County have gone up and up and up, they have commensurately lowered the rate against those property values so that your actual tax burden remains flat. And even with inflation, they simply prioritize and they drive maximum value for the tax dollars that are spent. And we still have top-notch law enforcement at the county level, top-notch infrastructure maintenance, and that's how they manage it. So you see there at the bottom how the county has adopted the effective tax rate for the past 3 years. Yes, sir?
So without voter approval, they can't increase it more than 8%?
That's right.
Did Collin County have a vote this year? Or?
No, because they did not increase it more than 8%. And that's the actual tax burden. When the rollback rate is calculated, they don't care about the rate change. They care about the actual tax burden change on existing homeowners, existing properties. So Collin County didn't have to have a vote. City of Plano, Frisco, McKinney, several cities, they have changed the tax rate over the past few years, lowered it, but still increased taxes an average of about 8% a year. But if they don't go over the 8%, then they don't have to allow it to be put to a vote. Yes?
Shelby, right now, don't they have to still fill out a petition in order to have it put to a vote?
That is correct. The way it works right now is if they do exceed that 8% mark and they raise your taxes more than 8% in a given year, then the citizens have to collect petition signatures. You got to go around and get petitions and then present those to the taxing authority, whether it's the ISD or the city, the county, whomever. And only if you meet the petition threshold, then can it be put to a vote. One of the bills that's going to be debated tomorrow changes that to require an automatic election in November if the local taxing authority exceeds that 8% rollback rate. But they're also talking about reducing that rollback rate, and we'll cover that later. So layman's terms, or simple terms, rollback rate is how high they can set your taxes or raise your taxes without giving you a say. Effective tax rate is just keeping your actual tax payments flat 1 year to the next. Okay, so now we're going to delve into the tax rate versus the tax burden. This is where I have seen the most confusion since the legislative session started in January. We've spoken about how the rate is just a percentage. All those figures, I'll go back here for a second. All these numbers here, those are the portion out of every $100 of valuation that they charge. It's just a percentage, just a ratio. So one of the things that you'll hear, these are the tax rates amongst several of the largest North Texas cities. City of Plano has one of the lowest rates, highlighted here, because I'm most familiar with Plano. This comes from a presentation at the Plano City Council meeting in January. So we see that Plano, for example, has one of the lowest rates because it has one of the highest average property values. Everybody wants to come to Plano, and it's no wonder. But because the property values are so high, if the city of Plano had a rate like Fort Worth, then our taxes would be astronomical because it's a simple equation, and we'll see that equation. So this is another thing you'll hear is that Plano has the lowest city taxes. Look at the highlighted areas. This is what they show for Plano, the tax rate, and what they do to compare with all the other major North Texas cities. This is defined as any city with a population greater than 100,000. They say based on Plano average home value. So they take the rates from each of those cities and apply them to Plano's average home value. But the income disparity between Plano, Frisco, McKinney, Irving, etc. is not that dramatic as the property values. Property values are a market force just like income, but the average income in most of our major North Texas cities is pretty close. So this is from the same January City Council meeting. This shows that Plano's city taxes, the actual tax burden, how much money you're charged every year, is in the dead middle of the road for all those 11 North Texas cities. It's better than all the ones on the right, and it's worse than all the ones on the left. So our taxes are actually 40% higher in Plano, our city taxes, than the tax burden for Arlington residents, the average Arlington resident. So here's the equation. This is simply how it works. The property value is set first by the county appraisal district. Then, after that's all said and done, the tax rate is set last by the local taxing authority, the ISD, the city, the county, and Collin College District. That equals your actual taxes, how much of your money you're going to pay in the next year in property taxes. So the taxing authority, ISD, city, county, Collin College, has complete control over what you're actually going to pay. So a lot of people at the Capitol and in Plano are hearing that the city and the ISD and the county don't set the property value. Well, no, they don't. And the Central Appraisal District, the County Central Appraisal District, doesn't set the rate that determines your actual taxes. So be informed.
This will be a good time to clear up a misconception. A lot of times we hear assessor and appraiser. This is a good time to show the difference. Your central appraiser, the chief appraiser, sets your appraised value. Here in Texas, when you hear the word assessor, this is all the assessor does. They take your appraised value, which is your property value, they take the tax rate, they do this math, and they send you your tax bill. So when you hear that the property assessor collector, he wears two hats. He assesses and he collects. This is all that the assessor part of his job does.
Right.
And that is an elected official, where the chief appraiser is an appointed official. So this slide's a good time to mention that, so I just wanted to inject that right now.
That's right. Thank you, Scott. So yeah, the appraiser and the appraisal district, they try to figure out the market value of your home. And the assessor takes that final number and says, here's your tax bill. So this is, again, using Plano as an example because that's what I'm most familiar with for obvious reasons. This is the 5-year property tax growth in Plano. So in 2013, the average Plano home value was just under $250,000. The latest figure, this is actually for 2018's values, was just under $370,000. So the red line represents the increase in city taxes on existing homeowners. This does not include growth. This is just actual tax dollars collected year over year from the average Plano homeowner. The blue line represents average income in Plano during the same time period. And the green line represents inflation. And that's not CPI inflation that you and I deal with, that's municipal cost index, which deals with things like asphalt and concrete, which most of us don't have a real use for, which is higher than CPI inflation. CPI inflation in North Texas has averaged only 1.5% a year for the past 5 years. Municipal cost index inflation is a little bit higher. It's averaged 2.3% per year for the past 5 years. So let's get into school districts and Robin Hood. Recapture, commonly called Robin Hood, makes up a full 18.1% of our entire tax bill. And it makes up 27.4%, more than a quarter of the school district share of the tax bill. Now, like I said, it takes money from property-rich districts and gives it to property-poor districts with no measure of income that I know of. Now, this isn't what happens with all of it, but this is probably the most egregious example. The state of Texas is ranked 43rd in the nation for education. We're pretty down there for public education. La Jolla ISD, near McAllen, near the border in southeast Texas, is a Robin Hood net beneficiary. They are a recipient. They took school funds and built a $20 million water park owned by the ISD that you all paid for. That's right. So one of the measures being discussed, and we'll get to this, is school finance in the Texas legislature. So there are a lot of things that go into that, but one of the things desperately needed in school finance is accountability. Yep. Well, there are very few controls, to be honest with you. Money that goes to a school district, the proponents for increasing taxes and spending more on schools make a very compelling case every time they have a proposal. It's for the children. And I don't know about y'all, but I make sure that my little girls, I have 3 little girls at home, that when they do something wrong, they are appropriately disciplined and learn that what they did wrong is not right and correct themselves in the future. So that's all about accountability. So that's what we need in our school finance system. That's what we need everywhere is accountability. But yeah, there was a demonstration or a rally, whatever you want to call it, at the Capitol about a month and a week ago. It was during spring break. So a bunch of teachers and students who were off for the week came to the Capitol basically to champion more funding for schools. And we keep giving more and more money to the school system every year, to the Texas education system, but we're still 43rd in the nation. So I will contend that without a solid foundation of accountability and strategy, no amount of money is going to fix it.
I have a question. Can La Jolla say that they charge for people to use the park as a profit, or do they have to require less?
Well, they could offset it that way. They're not recouping the entire value. But even if they did, an ISD shouldn't be the purveyor of a for-profit water park. That's right. Exactly. Yes, sir. You had a question.
You know, we see this happening even with big colleges where they start looking at results.
Yes. Oh yes, like I said, this is just the most egregious example, but this is happening all over Texas. Water parks aren't happening all over Texas, but the lack of accountability is happening all over Texas. Although there are a lot of water parks in Texas, but they're not owned by ISDs. All right. So tax relief options for homeowners. Again, this is for Plano. Every city, every county, every district is different. But in Plano, you have several saving graces, if you will. There is a disabled ceiling. This means if you become disabled, then your taxes are capped, and they will not go up anymore. There is also a disabled deduction. If you are disabled, then you can get $40,000 reduced from your taxable value. So if you live in that average home of $370,000, that average valued home, and you are disabled, then that taxable value can be reduced to $330,000, and your tax burden will be reduced commensurately. There is also an over 65 ceiling. If you have the good fortune to have already reached 65 in Plano, then your taxes are frozen. They're not going to go up year over year. I have a ways to go before I'm that lucky, and so my taxes are going to keep going up. The over 65 deduction also applies. Once you reach the age of 65, you can apply for this deduction to reduce your taxable value by $40,000 and reap a little bit of a benefit in your tax burden. And finally, we have the homestead exemption. This is only applicable to your primary residence where you actually live and sleep. So if you live and sleep there in the city of Plano, and every city is different, the maximum is 20%, and Plano allows that. So you can apply to get a 20% reduction from your taxable value to reduce your tax burden accordingly. If you have rental properties, that does not apply. Yes?
The ceiling and the deduction of the homestead, is that only for city taxes or is that for school taxes, all taxes?
This is just for the city of Plano. Because that's what I'm most familiar with. Like I said, each taxing authority is a little bit different. The ISDs each have their own policy. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Well, actually, the school is set by the Constitution. If you remember a couple of years ago, we had to vote on a constitutional amendment to raise it from 50 to 25,000. So the schools don't have a choice. They have to give you a homestead exemption of $25,000, that's setting your constitution. The others are actually voted on by the taxing entity. And you can go to the Collin Appraisal District, and when you pull up the website, right off to the right side, there's a spot that says exemptions and rates. If you push there, you can go down there and you can see what each city offers. What exemptions they offer. They can offer a flat rate, they can offer a percentage. The minimum is the $5,000. That's the lowest they can offer. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute. But so the only one that's set in stone is the ISD, and they don't have an option. Now the other, like cities, special utility districts, the college, they can elect to do that. That's why you heard some things. Some people say, well, if you do this to me, then we're going to take this exemption away. They actually do have that right.
That was proposed in the Plano City Council, that if the effective tax rate, which keeps your taxes flat, was adopted, then they would try to remove the homestead exemption and the over 65.
You know, maybe if you don't know, if someone's over 65 and they move within Plano, the new house they go to, obviously it's going to have whatever rate is on that house that year, and then it freezes thereafter.
Okay, your freeze moves as a percentage. So if you get into a freeze, and your freeze freezes you, say that you're paying 75% of what the taxes would have been without your freeze. As long as you stay within that taxing district, your freeze moves with you at that percentage.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily move at that dollar amount, because so if you move into a much bigger place, then you can't keep that low dollar amount. If you move from a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo into a mansion, you don't get to keep that low dollar amount, but you can keep that percentage of a freeze. Under the current code. And, keep in mind, this is the code. So if you ever want to go to sleep, you can't sleep, I'll loan you mine.
So it actually is in the city's best interest tax-wise to create more affordable housing for seniors, because then they would move out of their bigger, more expensive
And downsize.
houses, move into smaller, less expensive homes. They would still get the same percentage savings, but then probably a younger person who doesn't have a cap would move into that more expensive home, and the city would pick up all those taxes.
And another thing about the over 65, it's one of the few exemptions that you get that no matter when you turn 65 that year, it's good for the whole year.
Right.
You can turn 65 on December 31st, and you still get that exemption for the whole year. The appraisal district has told me that they have everybody's birthdays on file, and as soon as you turn that year you turn 65, they apply it. But I've sent 5 people down there in the past 6 months. 3 of them were wrong. So I would double check, I would make sure, and I would go down there and apply it.
Yeah. Know what you're eligible for and make sure you get it. Yes, sir.
Question. Guys, we're over 65 ceiling, but the over 65 deduction, something that I've not heard about before, is that getting applied for that separately, or
Yeah, you have to apply for it separately. So I can point you to the City of Plano website that has the deductions listed on it. I'm assuming you're a Plano resident?
Yes, and I turned 65 last year, and I talked to last year when I protested, I talked to the appraisal district about the exemption, and they talked with me about the over 65 ceiling, but they never mentioned the
They didn't say anything about the deduction? Okay, you can go back to the appraisal district and apply for it. And the other thing, let me, because this is a pet peeve of mine. There are companies out there that are targeting, especially seniors, that'll send you a marketing thing and try to convince you that this is a difficult process. And they said, for a percentage of your refund, we will file this paperwork for you. And they will have you sign something which is basically a power of attorney over this process, where they send that to the tax office, they process your refund, send it to you, then the tax office has no choice but to send the refund to them, and they may or may not send you your portion. Guys, this is a simple process. You can download the form off the website, you can go to McKinney or mail it in. It takes all of 3 to 4 minutes, and you can get this done. Don't fall for that. I mean, keep the money in your pocket.
That is as good a segue as I can think of.
Because because as an auditor for the county, just to clear up, he had said that I was auditor for the tax office. I'm actually an auditor for the whole county, but I have audited the tax office for over 5 years, so I'm very familiar with that process. It drove me nuts to see those checks go into those companies. Yes, sir.
2 or 3 weeks ago, we got in the mail this taxes that's coming up. Will it say on there, will it show us on there whether we are, what's called, whether we are already set up for the over 65?
Your appraisal notice should tell you. It will not tell you online. Your over 65 exemption will not show up online, and they did that on purpose because people were being targeted for scams because they look you up online, see the over 65 on your property records, and target you for some kind of scam.
But if we look close, we ought to be able to see.
Well, on your appraisal thing, where it says exemptions, your over 65 should be listed there. Okay, and if it's not, call them and check and see what's going on there.
Yeah. So again, y'all are all free to email us if you have follow-up questions or need help finding resources. We want to make sure, and can you go back to the previous slide, the left arrow, yeah. Make sure you know what you're eligible for, whichever city, county, ISD you're in. We can point you toward the appropriate online resources for that taxing entity so that you know what it offers that you're eligible for.
And guys, there's tons of exemptions. If you put solar panels on your house, there's like a $50,000 exemption. I mean, there's all kinds of exemptions. These are just the basics. That's one reason this book is so thick, and but anyway, but we just wanted to go over the basics tonight.
Yeah, I have a question. It says over 65, does that mean that you get deductions as well? Because it says over 65 on the form. But how do I know that's either the ceiling or the $40,000 deduction?
Okay, it's not going to. It should show that $40,000 here. So, like, how much does your school deduction say on there? It should say $65,000 for your ISD. Is that correct? Okay.
Feel free to get with us
You'll
after.
see me afterwards. I'll look at it. Okay. Okay. All right. Just a real quick thing. Prior to in 1980, imagine getting 4 of these instead of 1. Every taxing entity used to appraise separate from each other. So they would set, you might get 4 different values for your house. And
Fun, right?
yeah, so they created the Central Appraisal District. And it took a little while to get it all together, but that's when the Central Appraisal Districts were created. Just to give you a little history. And as Shelby's already mentioned, the appraisal values were set as of January 1st. So, if all you have was a vacant lot at January 1st, then that's all you should be appraised on. If it was mid-construction, that's all you should be appraised on. So, properties are to be appraised at market value. In layman terms, market value is whatever the house would sell for on the open market with a normal amount of buyers in a normal amount of time where all things are fair and equal. In other words, you're not desperate, you haven't filed bankruptcy, you're not desperate to get out of the house, that kind of thing. That no one has an unfair advantage, is what it says. Appraisal notices, like we already talked about, comes out on the 15th. Protests are by May 15th or 30 days as soon as you receive them. They did move that back last legislative session to give more time for protest hearings. The CAD may not increase your taxable value on your home if you are homesteaded. Now they can increase your appraisal value. So your appraisal value may go up beyond 10%, but not your taxable value.
That's an important thing I didn't touch on. Tell them go into a little bit on the appraisal cap, or the 10% cap.
Yeah, and you won't necessarily see it on here, but if you go to the appraisal district and pull up your house, you'll see a column in there that says cap loss, HS cap loss. What that dollar figure is what they have increased your appraisal value beyond what they can tax you. So just for nice round numbers, if your house is worth $100,000 and they've decided it's worth $120,000 this year, okay, that's beyond the 10,000 or 10%.
They can only raise the tax.
So they can tax you on 110, but that cap loss is going to be another 10,000.
That's right. That's why
You'll see that online.
Yeah, that's why when I moved my family from far east Plano to far west Plano a year and a half ago, and I lost 13 years of protection from that 10% annual maximum valuation increase, and I moved into a bigger home. I just took up more vertical space. We moved from a 1-story to a 2-story. Suddenly, my tax burden doubled. I was paying twice as much property taxes without using up twice as many city services or having twice as many kids in school. And I put a lot less wear and tear on the roads because I had a lot less commute after that.
Yes.
Theoretically, if you were to purchase a home, is that the market value? Let's say I purchased a home for $100,000, and the appraised value coming in, market value for that home is $130,000. I walk in to the protest meeting with my closing statements from purchasing that home. The market value is $100,000 for this home, because that's what I paid for this year or last year or whatever.
Now keep in mind, in general, the appraisal district does not have sales data.
No, I'm saying if I was to follow
Right. Now I'm going to say that's the definition in this code. That's the definition they give.
Are to be appraised.
Right.
Is that the law, or is that just the way you word it?
I was told when I bought my new home in West Plano a year and a half ago that I was going to be taxed based on the pretty much the actual sales value. But I was in the inverse situation. I bought at the peak.
Yeah. Well, that's the way the law is worded.
Yeah.
That they are to appraise it at market value, and then they go on to define what they consider market value.
So if you can show them the record of the sale that just occurred, then they should take that into consideration.
I'm just curious what the definition of market value is.
Well, that's the definition that's the definition that the people in Austin gave them to work off of.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Well,
that has to do with your tax burden.
Yeah. The 10% number is what the county appraisal office can raise your taxable value of your home. That's on that side of the equation. The 8% is the number set by state law to determine how much the actual taxing authority, the city, the county, etc., can raise your actual taxes without it going to a vote. So two completely different entities and two completely different numbers.
We kind of switch gears. The tax burden is your appraised value times your tax rate and how much you actually have to pay. So we're kind of backing up and we're just talking about your appraised value right now.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, back there.
So if you bought a house 20 years ago, and you have done nothing inside, but all the houses around you are going up because they are making total improvements. But if you had to sell your house, it is not going to sell at what your neighbor's houses are.
Perfect segue again.
Okay, you're getting ahead of me.
I think that's the next slide, isn't it?
I don't remember what order we're in. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll touch
slide after. We're getting
real quick. I'll mention that when they appraise, like Shelby said, they don't come out to every single house. They don't have the manpower to do that. They do a mass appraisal. In other words, they go into an area of town and they say, okay, like say a subdivision. Okay, the lots in this subdivision are worth this much money. Most of the houses were built at a certain time, and they've calculated that the houses in this area are worth this much a square foot. They don't know what they haven't upgraded. They don't know what repairs need to be done. They don't know the specifics of your house, and that's where we get into the protest. Okay, so just so you know that when they come to that value, they don't know the specifics of your house, and you can use that knowledge in your protest. Okay, first of all, review your statement. Make sure it's correct. Make sure you have all your exemptions that you're eligible for and that you applied for. Those things do drop off. They're not supposed to, but they do. They send what they call supplements to the tax office weekly, sometimes, to make sure that the tax office's system is correct so that they're calculating your tax bill correctly. So make sure that is there. Make sure that all the information on your house is correct. Sometimes when they put that information in, they put the information based on what plans were filed at the county clerk. They may not have built your house as big as they originally planned. You could actually be being taxed on a house bigger than what they actually built. If they planned to build your house 2,500 square feet, and you came in and said, you know what, I really don't want a house that big, and they only built it 2,200 square feet, you could be paying taxes on that extra 300 square feet. Make sure that you look at the details on the CAD. Make sure all that's correct. Make sure the classification is right. You can get your, someone to help you if you've got somebody in the real estate profession to help you with that kind of things. And I know this sounds silly, but make sure that you're being taxed by the right entities. I've actually seen this done, where they were being taxed by a school district that they weren't even in that school district's zone. And they were being taxed by one with a higher tax rate than the one that they should have been being taxed in. And they had been paying that higher rate for 2 or 3 years. Because they got picked up by the wrong tax zone. So yes? Well, make sure it's down as a single family and not as a multiple family. Make sure that it's flagged as residential, not commercial by mistake. You know, that kind of thing, because that does have an impact on what value they put on there.
So you have these CD codes or something like that are, like in my neighborhood, different houses have different CD codes, and that seems to make a big difference relative to one house is raised up versus another.
Yeah, those codes can, and I'm not real familiar with all the codes in Texas, but I know that those codes can impact how because they work off what they consider a best use, and if it's zoned one way, it could actually increase your value over.
It's kind of like just in one neighborhood where all these houses are basically the same, but they've gone in and assigned different ones different CD codes, and it makes a big difference in what the house is raised at. I asked them about where that come from. Oh, some appraiser, must have gone by early on, but we gave your neighbor that one, and you have this one, and they didn't seem to be too interested in scraping it out, because, their house is very comparable to ours.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you deal with something like that.
I'm not 100% sure, but if I would love for you to send that. I'd like to research that and look into it some more, because I just know that I've heard of some houses being wrong classification, and it did increase their value, which in turn increased their taxes.
Just say, I went through the study that in contesting process last year, that they had these codes, I thought they were SC, but maybe they were residential, and they were in different numbers. And I asked about it, and they said, well, that had to do with the finish out of your home.
Yeah.
It was constructed. And so the only way you could combat it was literally take pictures inside your house, go to another neighbor's house who was supposedly rated the same as you, where the 6-inch curl, whatever, around the ceiling, we don't have that, we have 3-inch, and you just have pictures of it, and now it shows that whoever was doing the job that day was being like, check your box.
And a lot of times they get those off of what the plans were originally, but what was built out may not be what they originally planned. Okay. All right. Next step is just, are you a good candidate? Not everybody may be. Get with a real estate professional. I mean, there are companies out there, and I'm not here to promote any one company. I did recently hear of an online company developed by a gentleman in McKinney. It's called propertytax.io. Like I said, I'm not promoting them, but apparently you can put in your information. It will tell you whether you're a good candidate or not. I will a disclaimer that they do charge. They don't charge to see if you're a good candidate, but they do sell a report that has comps on it, and I'm just saying that as a disclaimer. You have to have at least 3 comps. I would recommend you get at least 4 in case they try to kick one of yours out.
That has happened to me.
And when you get your comps, you need to get them as close to January 1st as possible. So get them like, in December, the first 2 or 3 weeks of January. If you walk in there with comps from last week, they're going to kick them all out.
And a comp is simply a comparison to similar properties in your area, similar homes in your area. Is anybody here a real estate professional, a realtor? Well, I'm sure you all know one, at least one. Get with them and ask if they can pull comps for you. They have access to all of this. They can look at similarly valued homes in your area and arm you with that.
And then the next step is call the appraisal district and ask for the comps that they use to set the value on your house. They have to give it to you. They can't deny it. By law, they have to give you these comps. And what they'll do is you'll see it, and they'll list the house. They'll list 4 or 5 houses that they've used to compare to your house, and then they'll show like adjustments. Say yours doesn't have a pool, and one of their comps does have a pool. It'll show an adjustment of a negative dollar amount for their pool, and you'll see some breakdowns on that. But study that, because when you go to fight your appraisal, these are the houses they're going to use to fight you. You've got an advantage there. They don't know what comps you're bringing, but you know what comps they're bringing. So you can study up on their comps, but they don't know what comps you have. If they try to fight you a little bit on it, you'll just remind them, hey, guys, you have to give it to you. You can either go in person, you can call. I have actually heard of people calling, requesting the comps to be sent to them, and when the comps came in the mail, along with that comp came a letter with an offer to decrease their value. Yeah, right. So, and if that offer decrease is within reason for you, then you guys are already done. You don't have to take any more of your time. Okay. Make a list of repairs you need around the house. I tell people all the time, you've got to change your frame of mind. Our homes are the most valuable things we own. We have not only do we have a financial connection to them, we have an emotional connection to them. It's where we raise our family. I'm sure that when Shelby thinks about his home and his 3 little girls, there's some emotion there. We have to change our mindset when we're going to fight our appraisals. This goes from our most valuable asset to the biggest dump on the block. If you need a new roof, don't document that. They don't know what repairs need to be made. They don't know that Uncle Bob got drunk at Christmas, knocked over the candles, and burnt half the living room up. You have to get written estimates. Take pictures, get written estimates. If you had some repairs that got done right after the first of the year, even better. Bring all that documentation in with you. Hey, I had to have a new roof. I had the new roof put on January 5th. So when you evaluated my house, the roof was bad and it cost $15,000 to put a new one in. this needs to come off of the price you estimated my house. Right. Right. The more you bring, the more they want to do. Gather all the information, get you pictures. Guys, spend $1. Go to Walmart, buy you a binder. Go in there looking professional, be organized. Don't come in there with a shoebox full of paper and just dump it. I mean, because go in there, look serious. They're going to take you more serious if you're organized.
You don't have to laminate everything, though.
Right. Yeah. You know, it doesn't have to be color coded or anything like that. But that's cool.
So if you tell them this year that you had to say your roof was your value of your home was $50,000 less than what they assessed at because the roof wasn't put on when they assessed it, they want that taken off next year that your home was worth $50,000 more than last year.
I didn't say you had to get repairs done.
Unless your roof is leaking like a sieve. Then
Right.
I'd get it done.
You don't necessarily have to get the repairs done, but get everything together showing them that these are the repairs need. Like the lady mentioned back there, if you haven't upgraded in the last 25 years and you still got the 70s shag carpet, take pictures of it. And all the other houses have been revamped. Take pictures of it.
I know this is minuscule, but we got, they raised our taxes because we had got gas gauge replaced the air conditioning unit put out. And that counted against us.
Yeah. If that's the thing, if you spend your life savings to cover your house in 12-karat gold plating, your taxes are going to go through the roof. And it makes no sense because you just spent your life savings on gold plating. You have no ability to pay. But that's how our property tax system works.
I mean, as you improve your house, yes, your property will go up, but the point is you're protesting this year's tax, this year's appraisals.
Yeah.
So, the next point there is all the stuff that would need to be done to your house to get it to the market value. Like if all the houses around you, if you live in an older downtown, where all the houses around you have been bought, gutted, got granite countertops put in, top of the line flooring, and everything like that, and your house hasn't, get written estimates on what that's going to cost to bring your house to that.
Because they will be comparing your value to all those other.
Right, they're going to compare your house to those houses. So show them, those houses are great, but this is what it's going to cost to bring my house to that level. And have it in writing. Have the pictures there.
Moreover,
show them that.
Right, and when they pull the comps that they use to value your home, that's going to be based on many actual home sales in the area. And I went through this 1.5 years ago, of course. When we sell our homes, we invest a little to make it more marketable. So if a house has gone for the Plano average of about $370,000 nearby, then chances are 10, 20, 30, however many thousands of dollars were invested in that home to make it worth that much, to make it sell for that much. So if you haven't invested all that in your home, like Scott's saying, make sure you have the documentation about what it would cost to make it comparable to that home.
And you might like this 70s shag carpet and you want to keep it. You're just going to have to get new written estimates every year. Okay? Like I said, you don't have to do all the repairs, you don't have to do all the upgrades, but you're going to have to get a new written estimate every year. In the back now?
My problem is I got antiques. My problem is it still looks good even though it's not an update. So how do I make it look bad? Compared to all the modern crap that's across the street.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to look bad. You just have to show that what you have is not at the same, what they're considered the same level of quality that the other houses are. I mean, just because that's your personal taste, but the general public is not going to pay the same amount for the 70 shag carpet that they're going to pay for pristine hardwood floors. Okay? The yellow pages are full of people that will come give you free estimates.
The city, one moment on that. The city of Plano and Collin County publish a contractors list every year of vetted contractors, quality contractors. So the written estimates are going to depend on what work needs to be done. You could have a roofer, you could have a plumber, the list goes, an AC repair company, the list goes on. So whatever repairs you think you need, you'll have to contact each of those. But the Plano and the Collin County guides can help direct you.
I will the disclaimer, they will call you and want to do the work, and you're basically going to tell them, hey, I chose someone else. But, ma'am, with them?
Most of us that have hail damage and were forced to make repairs, is that affect our property tax?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, you can show the paperwork where that repairs were done, because it does impact the value of your house, and those repairs had to be done. You just need to show that the damage was in place on January 1st and has had to be fixed.
Yeah, but you want to make sure though, I want to make sure people are mishearing you. If you had the work done last year, you don't want to be taking those in the charge from because they're gonna,
Right.
that's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Right, you want to make sure that whatever you're pointing out was damaged on January 1st and either still needs to be fixed or was fixed since January 1st.
Yeah. So if you had a brand new roof put on your home last year, then if they know that, they're going to increase your valuation accordingly.
If it got damaged last June and you had it fixed last October, you don't need to necessarily tell them that. That's not your job to tell them that. But if it got damaged last November and then you didn't get it fixed until mid-January, then you need to tell them that.
Does that apply to your 65 seating? Or 65 being 200 from a situation like that? If you had a house like a house or flooded, all of it will have to be taken out.
The over 65, if you make improvements, they do adjust it a little bit, but unless you make major improvements, I'd be careful on protesting and doing too many improvements or letting them know about too many improvements, because when you make improvements to your house, they basically unfreeze and then refreeze, and because the improvements can be taxed. Right, the repairs, the damage. Yeah, because the 65 freeze, your tax burden is not going to go up. No, you pay the over 65 freeze. You pay the lesser of the two amounts. You pay either your freeze or what it would be without the freeze.
So if your home value drops by 50% 1 year for whatever reason, then your taxes would go down.
Yeah, you would
But
have,
then they would be
to be able
refrozen.
to get an adjustment. You would have to be able to get your protest to go down below where it was when you froze.
Yes, sir.
Did you say the 65 freeze was on the tax burden or the tax rate?
The burden.
Burden.
Yeah, the rate is irrelevant. The rate is set across all properties in the city.
Yeah, after the freeze, whatever the burden and the rate, the appraisal and the rate, it's the burden that.
That's right.
And now, and keep in mind, not everybody offers the freeze.
That's right.
Like the city of McKinney does not offer the freeze.
Yeah. You got to check out.
They offer the exemption, but they don't offer the freeze.
That's right.
I believe so. I don't have them all memorized.
Plano does.
But is it city tax
Yes.
or the school tax?
Well, actually, it's school doesn't have the 65 freeze, does it?
No.
Okay, no. But the city does.
Yeah,
I thought they did.
But if you go down that's why I said go look at that exemption and rate.
Yeah.
Because like I said, there's 50 taxing entities in Collin County, and I don't have them all memorized on what they offer and what they don't. But if you go to Collin Central Appraisal District,
CollinCAD.org.
CollinCAD, and you will see on the right it says exemptions and rates, and you just push on that and it comes up with a spreadsheet, and it tells you every exemption that each entity offers and whether they offer a freeze or not. The only thing it won't have right now is it won't have the rates because those haven't been adopted yet for this year.
Yes, ma'am.
I just had a quick question. Does your square footage include your garage?
No, I don't believe so.
No.
And the second question, does your appraisal value, does it depend at all on your like your landscaping or a pool? I mean,
No.
if you've got a pool.
Pool will impact
But
it,
if it's
but your,
not
but your,
pool-
but your landscaping, no.
Or if your pool is not in good repair or something like that, that could be.
Yeah,
You can point out if your pool's not in good repair or it's not usable,
right.
because a pool does impact your value.
Yeah, but things like landscaping, decor, wall color, those don't factor in.
Yeah, if you've got the yard of the month in your subdivision, it's really not gonna impact it.
But
For the record, I don't, I keep a note just to keep the HOA off my back. Yes, sir.
I, looked at my property tax this year, and they differentiate the house from the real estate.
They always have. Yeah.
And I looked at, I had a very substantial, over 20% increase on the total. But I looked at it, and it's, the real estate has gone up, very significantly. And I don't see the justification for that process.
I think the simple answer they will pick.
Behind my house, that makes it a more favorable lot.
I think the simple answer they'll give you is they can't make more land.
Yeah.
They can't make more land, so it becomes more valuable. There's only a limited amount of land.
Yeah. Plano's,
So, like even on mine, my lot went up, my house actually went down. I'm not sure how, I mean, so
well, it's a year old.
and they said because there's, you know, the thing with property, there's only so much land that they have. And like I was talking to some people earlier, in my subdivision, every lot is the same price. But my lot, if you look out the back of my house, you see another house. People across the street, they get to see a beautiful park. And the people down the street get to see a golf course. Now, you and all of us know in this room that my lot should be worth less than the people that get to see the golf course and see the beautiful park. But that, because of the mass appraisal system that they use, they value all lots the same price.
They did in the past, but something changed.
Right. Yeah, I don't.
What about the opposite? If the lot is very small and they're appraising the house like all the neighbors, but you have a tiny little space, yard in the back.
that should factor in as well. And if it's not, you need to raise that as an issue.
And you can get
It
land.
requires a little math.
And you
with your
can
report.
fight your land. If there's something wrong with your land and you know it, that can be part of your protest. If you know that there's something wrong with your land that would make it undesirable,
Or that the
then
land value is not
you need to bring that up. If there's something buried in the backyard that would make people not want to buy that property, you need to bring that up to them.
But
I mean, I talked to some people the other day that said that in their backyard, and this is nothing bad, it's just that basically there's about an inch of topsoil and the rest it's on a big rock slab. But you can't grow anything back there. They can barely keep grass on it. So that's something they need to take into consideration. So, okay. Next, now that you received your notice, you got all your stuff together, you got your list of repairs, you got all your pictures taken, you got your notebooks ready. Now what do? You got two options. First, you can go in and actually do an informal meeting. You can go in and just ask to talk to an appraiser. Just walk in unannounced. You don't even have to have an appointment. This is what a lot of people refer to as an informal meeting. Ask to talk to an appraiser. Now keep in mind, depending on how many people show up, you may have to sit in the lobby for a little bit and wait. Sometimes you'll get an offer right there, and they'll say, okay, they'll pull up your house, they'll look at their comps, and they'll make an offer, okay, based on what you've shown me, based on what I'm seeing, we'll offer to lower your property X number of dollars.
And the sooner you do this, the shorter the wait will be. The closer you get to May 15th, the longer the wait will be.
But I would warn you, if they ask you how much you think your house is worth, don't answer.
$10.
And I mean, unless you have irrefutable evidence that you can do the math and say, okay, all my comps say my house is worth this, and all my repairs are worth boom, 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 and when you do the math, it's this, I wouldn't answer that question. Let them make an offer. And if it's satisfactory, take their offer. They'll have you sign a little sheet, your protest is over, and you're done. Okay? A lot of people, once they had this informal meeting, if they don't get an answer, if they don't get a reduction, they think they're done, they give up, they go home, and say, oh, I guess I'll try again next year. Guys, that's not the end of the road. They have built a process in that you can go before the appraisal review board and you complete your case. The appraisal review board is made up of 3, sometimes up to 5 people, and they're people just like you and I. They serve on 2-year terms, they do go through a little bit of a training course, and you present your case. First, you present your case.
Go ahead and show them the next slide. That's on there.
Yeah. You present your case at the APR hearing. The appraisal district then presents their case, and then you get a chance to do a rebuttal. And that's a good thing. They don't get to do a rebuttal. And remember, you have their comps. Now they get to see everything you bring in. You get to present it, so they get to look through everything. And then the panel will then have a discussion. Sometimes they'll ask you to leave the room. Sometimes they'll have it do it right there in front of you. And they will make a decision. Sometimes they'll go with, get you where you want to be. Sometimes they'll meet you somewhere in the middle. Sometimes they'll just tell you no. Okay. Now that's not the end of the line. If you want to spend the time and money, some of this is not, big companies spend lots of time and money fighting their appraisals. One of the biggest ones I saw is every Chick-fil-A in North Texas all got together and sued the appraisal district. And they won. You can first file an appeal with the state. You can go down to Austin and file your appeal. And if that doesn't work, you can actually sue in district court. You don't see that really happen with people like you and I that, on our little houses. But commercial, Walmart, Lowe's, Whataburger recently did it and got quite a bit of a refund because they fought it. But so I said you can go all the way to court on the whole thing, and then if you lose that, I guess you can file an appeal and keep going through the judicial system. But I wouldn't recommend that. You'll spend more money than you'll probably get in refunds. Okay.
All right. This section will not take long. We will open it up for Q&A after this is done. But the Texas legislative session started in early January. And one of the biggest things on the docket for the legislature was property tax reform and relief. Especially in North Texas, most of our legislators campaigned on this last year before the November election. To date, 0 items have passed from the priority legislation. So there are 3 big ones on here. HB 1, that's simply the budget. Texas legislature meets for 5 months every 2 years. Roughly 5 months, every 2 years. So in every session, they set the budget till the next session. In the current session, the House voted unanimously, 149-0, to increase spending by almost 16%. HB 2 and SB 2, this just means House Bill 2, Senate Bill 2. It's companion legislation. They filed them at the same time. This was such a big deal, they got the number 2 for the bill name. 1 is reserved for the budget. So these were the big ones that were filed right up front. This is for property tax reform. SB 2 and HB 2 were filed identically. It's a 116-page bill, so there's a lot in it, but the biggest point of contention in the bill, and this is why I went to Austin twice to testify, was to reduce that rollback rate of 8%, which is how much they can raise your taxes in any year without allowing you to vote on it, down to 2.5%. Remember, the 8% threshold was set in 1981 when inflation was about 8%. It was out of control. That has not been adjusted since. Inflation, according to the Municipal Cost Index, like I said, has averaged 2.3% for the past 5 years, so it's set to bring that in line with inflation. So the House Ways and Means Committee, 3 weeks ago now, I think, in the dead of night, literally at 1 a.m. after they passed the budget, the House Ways and Means Committee stripped reform for school districts out of HB 2. School districts, depending on where you live, comprise 60 to 70% of your overall property tax bill. So for there to be no reform for school districts means that the teeth in HB 2, SB 2 were ripped out. Then, about a week and a half ago, it all fell apart. HB 3 at the bottom, by the way, passed the House with one dissenting vote. HB 3 included taking the $9 billion, that's billion with a B, $9 billion state surplus. Remember, a surplus is money you were not expecting. Nobody asked for it. Nobody needed it. It's extra money. You found it under the couch cushions. They decided to spend at least 2/3 of that instead of giving it back to taxpayers in the form of long-promised tax relief. So the latest proposal that was put forth about a week and a half ago is to increase the state sales tax by 1% to offset a reduction in property tax spending for school districts, and they are trying to sell this as tax relief. Now, personally, I don't know about you, but I don't care who's taking my money. If I'm out the same amount of money, that is not relief at all. So don't fall for that. So everything went into chaos a week and a half ago. Governor Abbott came out and said that he will veto any bill that does not include reform for school districts. And then the House just blew up. And everybody went into a tizzy, and everybody went back to the drawing board. Yes?
You know, I thought I heard that there was a legal issue was the reason why
Yes.
they had to separate out
That's right.
cities
From school districts. That's right.
And that was the reason why they did that, with the expectation that they would come in with a separate bill specifically
HB 3 was that separate bill.
with the school districts.
That's right. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. That's what we were all told, that the Ways and Means Committee had to take out the 2.5% rollback rate for school districts for a technical legal reason. It had to go into HB 3, the school finance bill, instead. So when it was taken out of HB 2 by the Ways and Means Committee, we immediately started contacting the members of the Chairman Huberty's committee for HB 3, and Chairman Huberty is the author of HB 3, saying, okay, everybody's telling us this has to go into HB 3. This is the line everybody's giving us. Let's make sure it goes into HB 3. Never went into HB 3. And it was voted 149 to 1, HB 3, without lowering the rollback rate for school districts. So that's when Governor Abbott came out and said, enough is enough. I'm going to veto anything that does not include reform for school districts. And then that's when everything went into chaos. So a few days later, actually Monday of last week, the Senate passed SB 2 with a minor modification. They kept the authored rollback rate of 2.5% for school districts, but they increased all other taxing authorities to a limit of 3.5%. Not the 2.5% I'd like, but not too bad. So since school districts make up the bulk of your tax bill, it's actually, I calculated it for Plano and Cullen County, it's actually a weighted average of 2.8%.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I guess I was being hopeful when I saw that bullet point, but the way you said it makes it sound like it's not the case. So when they said proposed to spend 2/3 of the $9 billion state surplus, you're saying that the proposal wasn't to spend 2/3 of the $9 billion surplus to fix the school finance problem? It was just to go spend it on other.
No, they were going to take, I think, $2.7 billion, roughly a third of it, and give teachers a pay raise, which is good, but there was no application about who got what and why. If you're a brand new teacher that started this year, you'd get a $5,000 pay raise. If you've been teaching for 2 decades, you'd get a $5,000 pay raise. And then they were going to take another $3 billion and just spend it on schools. Just go nuts. Water parks for everybody. Yeah. And then the $3 billion that was remaining, or 2.7 to be precise, and this was Matt Shaheen's amendment, 2.7 billion was proposed to go back to taxpayers as property tax relief by reducing the maintenance and operations portion of your school tax bill. But then everybody wanted to get their hands in that 2.7 billion and whittle it down to the point of meaninglessness. So that's what your current legislature is doing. Now, tomorrow in the House, because everything went into chaos, SB 2, as passed by the Senate, has now been sent over to the House for consideration. So SB 2, with the 2.5% rollback rate for schools and 3.5% for all other taxing authorities, is scheduled to go to the House floor tomorrow for debate. So they're going to discuss all this. They already know the governor said he's going to veto anything that doesn't include school districts. And we'll see what comes out of that. But this is the entire package. Now, because property taxes and school funding are inextricably linked in Texas, this is kind of a thorny matter. And there are a lot of things involved in it. One of the things I testified for in Austin was HB 281, if I'm getting the number right, which is Mays Middleton's bill to eliminate taxpayer-funded lobbying. So this is where local taxing authorities, like cities, can get your tax dollars, and then they can pay lobbyists to go to Austin and lobby the legislature to increase your taxes. Yeah. So these are the reform proposals that I'm advocating. Hold the line on the 2.5% rollback rate for all local taxing authorities. Now, every time I've been to Austin to testify, there has been a parade of city and county officials declaring municipal Armageddon if they cannot raise our taxes more than 2.5% per year without getting our permission. And that's all it is. They keep calling it a cap. Universally, they refer to it as a cap. A cap means you cannot go above it. This is a trigger, so that if they want to raise your taxes by 3%, 5%, 100%, whatever, then they automatically have to give you a say in a vote in November. That's all it does. And if they can make their case why they need a 100% tax increase, go vote. Approve it. So we also want to return a majority of that $9 billion surplus to taxpayers in the form of promised tax relief by taking the state surplus, and what this effectively does is reduce the burden of Robin Hood by taking the state money to fund the M&O portion, the maintenance and operations portion of the school tax bill. And then lastly, designate 90% of future surpluses to buy down that M&O portion of school tax rates across the state until Robin Hood is effectively eliminated and no longer needed. Now, I don't know what the audio on this is going to be like. I inserted this at the last minute, and I told the good folks here that I was not going to need audio hookup other than the mics. So I'm going to try to play this, and we'll see what we get. This was taken Tuesday of last week, 1 week ago today, at the Capitol in the Rotunda. I led a statewide rally for property tax reform and relief on the south steps of the Capitol a week ago. Then we all went into the Rotunda, and we made our voices heard. Let's see if that's the laser pointer. I'm just going to move the mouse. not advancing. One moment, please. Yeah, see if you can. Yeah, there we go. So what can you do? That's what we did on Tuesday to make our voices heard, literally, from the rotunda. They could not ignore that. So first thing you can do, get your comps. Contact a real estate professional. Everybody's got to know someone. And ask them to pull comps for you. Get 4, like Scott said. And be informed about your appraisal. Protest your valuation effectively. Document the repairs needed and the estimates to effect those repairs. If you need $100,000 worth of work done on your home to bring it up to market value, that should be a direct $100,000 reduction in your the assessed or appraised market value of your home. Get involved. Remember, protesting your valuation is just the first step, and that can make a personal difference with your tax burden. But if your local taxing authorities keep setting rates higher and higher, or keep setting the rates so that your tax burden goes higher and higher, then not much is going to change.
Guys, we have between 70 and 80,000 people protesting appraisals in the last 2 years. And we have probably as many people in this room as have protested budgets and tax rates in the last 2 years. If 70,000 people showed up at city council meetings and ISD budget meetings, they might think twice about putting stuff in the budget that they don't need or that they shouldn't be spending money on.
That's right.
Think about that. There's only 2 parts of the equation, your appraisal and your tax rate. Why protest one half of the equation if you're not going to say anything about the other half?
That's right. So, yes?
Do you have any feel, I forgot to ask when you had the slide up, but the 16% overall increase in the budget, I mean, obviously there's inflation, but that's a small piece. Was there any general explanation of what was driving the other 13% increase above inflation?
Best I could tell, I haven't scrutinized the state budget yet. Probably not going to for at least a month. But it was kind of across the board. Yeah, everybody got their share. Yes, sir.
What percentage of that 70 to 80,000 protests, is there any data on how much they actually get lowered or raised value? And I have the second part is, one thing you can do, I think, is submit comps, but aren't there other ways that you can argue? So, for example, I have a house in Allen that's a rental property, and I waited till the last minute, and I didn't know all this, and I just wrote a letter saying that I have listed the property for rent, and it had sat on the market for like 3 months without, and I had to eventually lower the rent to be a function of property values. So I just wrote all that in a letter, and I sent it in on the last day. I didn't know what I was doing, and they actually gave me an offer that was significantly reduced. It was still an increase, but they did offer me a significantly reduced.
That's good.
thing. Yeah,
The CAT put out some numbers, but it only included formal protest. So it didn't, so I really didn't take much stock in it because it didn't include things like you're talking about. So I really don't, they really couldn't tell me how many total got lowered. So, I've got a couple people over here.
Just a quick question on the protest. If you have any opinion, is it more effective to protest it yourself or try to get a third party involved?
From the stats I've seen, it's about as successful in yourself. I mean, it just depends on how much time, because you have to pay for somebody else to do it. And sometimes they win, and sometimes they don't, and you got to pay them whether they win or lose. Some of the companies will do it they only get paid if they win, and some of them want to pay no matter what. So.
You said the comps, you get 4 comps, and the time frame for those comps, was it close?
I would try to keep it as close to January 1st as possible, but don't hesitate to go before January 1st. So like say right after Thanksgiving all the way up to January 1st.
And how far away is the record from that?
You want to try to keep it with, if you can get them in the same neighborhood, that's great. You want to try to keep similar time frame built, similar style houses. I mean, if you got three subdivisions going in at the same time, you can do one of those 3 subdivisions. You know, I know in the past, if you're in the last phase of one subdivision and there's the first phase of another subdivision, that's fine. But going, if you're in the last phase of a subdivision, going to the first phase that was built 5 years ago is probably not going to help you.
Yeah, I realize we've run a little long. I don't know how soon they're going to have to close up here. After we finish up on this slide, I'm going to put our email addresses back up here for you. I'm happy to share this entire deck with anybody. Just email us. And yes. Oh yeah. And so just email us. We'll send you the deck. So to close out real quick, as Scott said, 60 to 70,000 people, or 70 to 80,000 people protesting their valuations. But the school board meetings, the city council meetings, the county commissioner court meetings, where they actually set the rate to determine how much you're going to spend in taxes the next year, are virtual ghost towns. And that's where the rubber really meets the road.
And those dates are published.
That's
have
correct.
to be by law.
Yeah.
They have to publish when they will discuss the budget, when they will set their tax rate, and they have to have more than one meeting. So it's not like it's a secret.
Yep.
They don't have secret meetings in the middle of the night. They have to publish those by law.
So
Why they still have to publish them in newspapers is beyond me, but they have to publish them on the website, and they have to publish them in newspapers.
That's the county or the city?
Every taxing entity.
yeah, the school board
Water
sets.
districts, school boards,
Yep.
county, cities.
School board sets the rate in June. City sets the rate in September. County sets the rate in September. I'm actually not sure about Collin College Board, but it's each of them individually. They set their own rate to determine what you're going to shell out the next year in taxes. So make sure you attend those meetings. Make sure you stay informed and follow it, because that is what really affects you. And with the current reforms in the Texas legislature, contact your legislators. Develop a relationship with your legislators and your local elected officials. Make sure they hear from you regularly. So state senators in the area are there, state representatives are there. If you're not sure who your legislator is, just Google "Who Represents Me Texas." That will take you to a State of Texas webpage where you just plug in your physical address and it will pull up your legislators. And last but not least, vote. Make sure your voice is heard. There's an election going on right now.
When you go through the process and you're successful, you get your tax. Is that only the current tax year, or does that number change?
Yes, this is for the current tax year. Now, that's where they start this year, that'll set your rate where they can only go 2% on that next year.
I was just gonna say that I went through the process last year, going to I didn't know about the walk-in, so I just filed my thing online and I was given a date and I went in front of the Explorer. And I can tell you, it was one of the most frustrating experiences I've ever had in my life. I was like 12th in line, so I got to sit there and you're here and they're there, and all the people are right here. So you're here in every case. And it was galling, the level of apathy on people on board. And I was amazed because I thought the board members, these were trained, licensed, professional real estate industry people. I found out later, and they were just like the most rubber stamping and I mean, it was nauseating. I've seen them get really upset and worked up, and I was listening to what they were saying. I'm like, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, they should get that. And they were, and I got up there and I went through pretty much the same kind of thing. And they ended up, but it was funny because I actually got a reduction before I went. When I requested it, they sent me a letter without anything and they reduced it. I still wanted to try to get it lower, didn't, but then the last, I guess that was 2 years ago, the last 2 years, it hasn't barely moved. So I don't know if I got money that day, they marked my account, well, that's
Hey Scott, what time do we need to close up shop?
So I'll go early.
Okay.
Okay.
We're happy to make ourselves available for as long as you like. Of course.
So I actually live in Denton County.
Okay.
Right over on the other side of Parker.
Yeah.
And they don't have a bad system, but now I'm going to do everything you told me because I didn't really fix a lot of things in my place because of my bachelor.
Gotcha.
I feel like, you know, they think you're like their personal ATM.
That's right.
But like this year I'm going to do it that way. But on their website, what you can do is I got the letter and I went to that kind of website and he said, I got the accounts and all I said was, I think you're being unrealistic. I just bought this place for $218 and I was telling me it's $240. I go, I'll give you $222. And then I said, they're going to say, fuck you or something. They came back with like $225, I guess, just above me. So that one I did, but this year I'm going to do it exactly what you said.
Good.
So thank you.
It can go down, it just can't go up. So like that's right. So let's say your home is, just to make the numbers easy, let's say your home is valued at $100,000 and you're frozen. And then it goes up to $200,000. You're still not going to pay any more in taxes. But then the next year, we've got a wildly roller coaster market. It drops down to $50,000. Then your taxes drop to $50,000. And then the next year, it goes up to $500,000. Your taxes stay at $50,000. Sure. Thanks for coming. Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for coming. Okay. Welcome. Right.
It says this home is not under. So I sent it clean. The Senate apparently has not been applied.
They didn't process it.
So is that something that I can walk in?
You should be able to. Scott would be able to tell you better, but you can address it. Now, do you happen to have any documentation about you having sent this in last year? I mean, last year. You know, when you sent your driver's license to them. Oh, you sent your driver's license this year? Okay, then that may be, what time did you do that? That may be what it was. They looked as if